Hello, dear students. My name is Vulfovich and our today's topic is the passive voice. In this lecture, I'm not going to tell you about the basic principles of forming passive voice, basic rules, basic grammar stuff, because I suppose that you already know it. I want to concentrate on some interesting features of the passive voice. I mean, such features as are studied on advanced level of English. After each subtopic, you will have exercises by using which you can check yourself. The keys will be provided after each slide. And now, let's get started. The first thing I would like to talk about is how we use passives. The first thing we know is that in an active sentence we need to include the agent as subject. Using a passive allows us to omit the agent by leaving out the prepositional phrase with by. So, for example, we can use passive when the agent is not known. My office was broken into when I was on holiday. So that means nobody knows who broke into my office. The thing is that it was broken into. People in general. An order form can be found on page 2. So anybody can find this order form. So it's not necessary to mention who exactly can find the form. Is unimportant. Like, he's thought to be somewhere in Russia. It doesn't matter who thinks so. Just he is thought by some people. And when it's obvious, like she's being treated in hospital. If she is in hospital, that means that she is treated by medical staff, doctors, etc. So it's obvious and there is no necessity to mention it. When we have factual writing, so we describe some facts, procedures, processes, we sometimes wish to omit the agent as well because it's not necessary. When this happens, we use passives. Like, look at the example. Nuclear waste will be still radioactive even after 20,000 years, so it must be disposed of very carefully, or it can be stored as a liquid, or containers which are encased in concrete, or the most dangerous nuclear waste can be turned, and so on and so forth. So here the agent is not important. And moreover, it's a factual writing, so we concentrate on facts. And that's why we use passives here again. But passives are mostly used in formal speech. That means that in informal contexts, we can use active sentences using such things as people, somebody, someone, something, they, we, you, even when we do not know who the agent is. Like, somebody will give you the questions a week before the exam. This is an informal sentence. And if we want to make it formal, it will look like this example. You will be given the questions a week before the exam. Or the questions will be given to you a week before the exam. So examples with passive are more formal rather than examples with active. So the usage of somebody, some, and something, they, or passive voice depends on the context and the circumstances in which we use this or that form of the passive. Some more information about using passives. In English, we usually prefer to put the topic at the beginning of the sentence and comment on that topic at the end. when we use passive, we can do exactly in this way. Just look at these two examples. The first example. The 3 machines tested for the report contain different types of safety valve. The Boron Group in Germany manufactured all the equipment. All the equipment is the topic of the whole sentence. It's important, but in the active voice, we put this topic in the end of the sentence because these are the rules of sentence formation. But now, using passive, we can put this topic or the equipment in the beginning of the sentence. And that means that the emphasis will be on the equipment. Look here. All the equipment was manufactured by the Boron Group in Germany. So using passive voice allowed us to put the necessary information in the beginning of this sentence. That is one of the most important key features of the passive voice. Moreover, if we have one subject, by one subjects we mean a lot of words which, by the way, serve as subjects, like by Don's decision to give up his job, so this and move to Sydney. This all is a subject because it's the whole thing is John's decision. So it is more natural to put one subject at the end of the sentence. When we use passive, we can do it. So this sentence, I was surprised by Don's decision to give up his job and move to Sydney, is more natural than Don's decision to give up his job and move to Sydney surprised me. Of course, we can use both variants, but when we put the verb in the very end of the sentence, those who listen to us, they have to wait until you pronounce the whole subject, until they hear the key verb, surprise. So it's more natural and more simple for those who are going to listen to you to use passive voice here. Now let's move on. This is your first exercise on the things we have just discussed. Please read the task carefully and pause the video, because on the next slide you will see the keys. Now you may pause the video. And now pause the video again to see the keys. This is another exercise for you. Use appropriate forms of the verbs given to complete this text. In each case, decide whether an active or passive form is needed. You may again pause the video, and on the next slide you'll see the answers. These are the answers, so you can check yourself, and let's move on. Now I would like to talk to you about forming passive sentences. Verbs such as give take both a direct object and indirect object in two patterns: verb plus indirect object plus direct object, or verb plus direct object plus preposition plus indirect objects. So such verbs have two corresponding passives. So we can say Alice gave us that vase, and Alice gave that vase to us. Both sentences are grammatically correct. So both corresponding passives will be also correct. It's like we were given that vase by Alice, it's optional, and that vase was given to us by Alice. The passive form you choose depends on which is more appropriate in a particular context. If we specify an agent, this follows by at the end of the clause, so you can see by Alice if you want to specify it. Please note that in informal contexts, to can be left out in the second passive pattern. So to in informal cases can be left out. In formal cases, we cannot leave it out. Many of these verbs are to do with giving, so such words as give are award, hand, lend, offer, send, throw, and telling, ask, read, teach. There are also verbs that can't be followed by indirect objects plus direct object in the active, and so they have only one of these passive forms. So we can't say he explained me the problem, because it turns out like I was explaining him to somebody, so we can't use it, it's just illogical. So the corresponding passive is also not correct. I was explaining the problem. The only correct variant is he explained the problem to me, and the problem was explained to me in the passive. Many of these words deal with reporting, so they include such verbs as announce, demonstrate, describe, introduce, mention, propose, report, and suggest. Continuing this topic, I would like to mention that verbs followed by object plus complement in the active have only one passive form. They elected her president. She was elected president. So we can't use any other forms of passive in this case. Other verbs like these are to do with giving someone a particular position, like appoint, declare, make, nominate, vote, and naming, like call, name, and title. Some verbs that are followed by object plus bare infinitive, so that's an infinitive without to, in the active, are followed by a to infinitive in the passive. It's like they have made him return the money. So according to the rules of the infinitives, we do not use particle to, so we can't say they have made him to return the money. But in the passive voice, the particle to appears, so we have he has been made to return the money. Other verbs like these are feel, hear, and help, but help can be used with both variants in the active. Please know that. Observe and see. Now this is your first exercise on the things we have just discussed. Read the task carefully, pause the video, because on the next slides you will see your answers. Make one corresponding passive sentence or two, if possible, as in one. Look carefully at the tense in the sentence given. That is important, especially when you're working with passives. The tense in the first sentence will be the same as the tense in the next sentence. These are the keys to these exercises. As you can see, sometimes there are two possible answers. Let's move on. This is another exercise for you. Choose an appropriate form of one of these verbs to complete the sentences, and write a corresponding passive sentence starting with the words given. Use each verb once only. So as you can see, you have these verbs here: appoint, bring, declare, demonstrate, help, introduce, see, and tell. And don't forget to choose an appropriate form. In the next slide, you will see the answers. These are the answers. Now let's talk about forming passive sentences, verb plus ing or to plus infinitive patterns. As you know, there are some patterns of verbs which can be used either with the infinitive, either with the gerund, ing form. In the passive, we have almost the same thing. So now let's look closer to active patterns with the verb plus ing. The active pattern, verb plus object plus ing, is made passive with be plus past participle plus ing. So like, they saw the monkey climbing over the fence. It's an active because they saw the process how a monkey was climbing over the fence. In the passive voice, it will be like this. The monkey was seen climbing over the fence. So as you can see, we have was, it's our be, past participle, it's seen, and ing, it's climbing over the fence. That is the way we turn such sentences from active into passive. Other verbs like these are bring, catch, hear, find, keep, notice, observe, send, and show. It's like everyone was brought running into the room by his screams. Was brought running. In the security video, the burglars are seen entering the bank through a window. Are seen entering. Again, by the verb to be, we can use any time, any tense we need. Some verbs that can be followed by an ing form can be used with the passive form being plus past participle. I really love being given presents. That means that I really love when people give me presents. Or the children enjoyed being taken to the zoo, so children like when their parents or friends, for example, take them to the zoo. Other verbs like these include avoid, deny, describe, dislike, face, hate, not, imagine, or imagine, like, remember, report, resent. And finally, verbs which in the active are followed by an object consisting of a noun phrase and ing clause usually have no passive. I dread him or his finding out. So he is afraid that he will find something out. In this case, it's a noun phrase. So we can't say he is dreaded finding out because we lose the logic, we use the meaning, the sense. So the sentence becomes very difficult to be understood. Other verbs like this include anticipate, appreciate, dislike, forget, hate, imagine, like, mind or not mind, recall, remember. So with these verbs, passive forms are not possible. And now let's look at the active partners with the verb plus to infinitive. The active pattern, verb plus object plus to infinitive, is made with be plus past participle plus to infinitive. Look at these sentences. Mr. Price has taught Peter to sing for many years. And Peter has been taught to sing by Mr. Price for many years. So in the second example, we have be, which is has been, taught past participle, and to infinitive, to sing. So as you can see, the to infinitive in the first sentence remains in the second sentence. Other verbs in this pattern include advise, allow, ask, believe, consider, expect, feel, instruct, mean, order, require, tell, and understand. Please notice that in some contexts it is possible to make both verbs passive. Changes to the taxation system are expected to be proposed. So in this sentence, both verbs are in the passive voice, and they are absolutely correct because are expected is the passive voice and to be proposed is the infinitive in the passive form. And compare the active. We expect the government to propose changes. So no passives, just special verb patterns. Some verbs followed by an object plus to infinitive in the active have no passive. Susan liked Tom to be there. So we can't say, we can't say Tom was liked to be there because sounds really strange. Tom was liked by somebody. If you don't find it strange, try to translate this passive sentence in into Russian, and you'll see that it will be perhaps possible using the means of the Russian language, but strange anyway. We can say that we don't say like this. Verbs like these are to do with liking and wanting, and include can't, bear or just bear, hate, love, need, prefer, want, and wish. The active pattern verb plus to infinitive plus object is made passive with verb plus to be plus past participle. Just compare these two sentences. Supermarkets started to sell fresh pasta only in the 1990s, and fresh pasta started to be sold by supermarkets only in the 1990s. In the active form, they use just the form of the verb plus to infinitive, and in the passive we have verb started to infinitive to be sold, an object by supermarkets. Other verbs in this pattern include appear, begin, come, continue, seem, tend, and also agree, aim, arrange, attempt, hope, refuse, and warn. The verbs in the first group and start have corresponding meanings in the active and passive sentences, but the verbs in the second group do not. Just compare. People have come to regard her as the leading violinist of her generation. It's active, so it corresponds to the passive form. She has come to be regarded as the leading violinist of her generation. So they are equal, and Mr. Smith wanted to help me, and I wanted to be helped by Mr. Smith. They do not correspond to each other because in the first case Mr. Smith wanted to help me, so it was his wish, and in the second sentence it was my wish. So these sentences do not correspond in their meanings. Now let's move on. Everything has fallen down. Okay. In this exercise, you have to complete these sentences using one of these pairs of verbs. Use either was plus were plus past participle ing or past simple plus being plus past participle. Don't forget to use pairs of words. And just as usual, pause the video and you'll see the answers on the next slide. These are the keys you may again pause the video and you'll see the next slide. In this exercise, you have to, if possible, complete this sentence using the pair of verbs given. Make passive forms with past participle plus ing, past participle plus to infinitive, or past simple plus being plus past participle. If no passive is possible, write no passive. So please be careful with this exercise, because there will be cases when no passive can be formed. So don't try to create ridiculous examples. These are the answers. And now we're going to talk about reporting with passive verbs. This topic is slightly related to the topic reported speech, but it's like the implementation of these verbs in the passive forms. We often use a passive to report what people say, think, etc., particularly if it's not important to mention who is being reported. It's like we mentioned in the beginning of our lecture. Look at these examples. People in the area have been told that they should stay indoors. So somebody told the people that they should stay indoors. It doesn't matter who. It's like when we had this lockdown last spring, remember? So we were told to stay indoors, for example. And everyone was asked to bring some food for the party. Maybe we know these people who asked them to bring some food to the party, but it's not important to mention because everybody understands it. And that's why we omit the agent of this sentence. Another common way of reporting what is said by an unspecified group of people is to use it plus passive verb plus that clause. Using this pattern can allow us to put important information at the end of this sentence. Look at these examples. It is reported that the damage is extensive, and compare it with the damage is extensive according to the government sources. Do we really need to know that the government sources informed us about this thing? No, we actually don't need. It's more important that it is reported, so it has already been reported. So we just have to understand the information, and that's all. It has been acknowledged that underfunding contributed to the problem. Maybe it were the scientists who thought so. Maybe it were some other people. It's not important, but we need to make the information known, and so that's why we use it has been acknowledged. It's present perfect passive, that underfunding contributed to the problem. That is what the most important thing for us. It can be seen that prices rose sharply in September. Of course, who can see the growth in prices? People, of course, people who buy products or goods. So it can be seen as a passive form which is used because it's obvious who see it, and the attention is paid to only the information we need to provide. Other verbs like that can be used in this pattern include agree, allege, announce, assume, believe, calculate, claim, consider, decide, demonstrate, discover, establish, estimate, expect, feel, find, hope, intend, know, mention, plan, propose, recommend, reveal, say, show, suggest, suppose, think, and understand. Please notice that many other verbs connected with reporting are not used in this pattern, including encourage, inform, persuade, reassure, remind, tell, warn, but can be used as in A. We have been informed that we have to leave the building, but not it has been informed us, because it has been informed us, it sounds first of all illogical, so it can't be used in this pattern. But we have been informed, it is possible, because there were some people who informed us about that, and that's why it's possible. These verbs need a personal object before the that clause in the active form. They have informed us that. So if we want to make a sentence something like this, it's better to use an active form then. An alternative to it plus passive verb plus that clause is to use subject plus passive verb plus to infinitive if we want the subject to be the topic of the sentence. Just look at these examples and compare. It is reported that the damage is extensive, and the damage is reported to be extensive. So both theorems are possible. The first one is formed by means of it, and the second one is formed by putting the topic of the sentence on the first place. Or it has been acknowledged that underfunding contributed to the problem, and underfunding has been acknowledged to have contributed to the problem. Both theorems are possible, but in the second ones, we put the topic of the sentence first. Most of the verbs listed in the box B, its above, can be also used in this pattern except for announce, decide, mention, propose, recommend, suggest. We can only use tell in this pattern when it means order. So we can say I was told, like I was ordered to go with them to the railway station, but the accident was said to have happened just after midnight. It's impossible, it's not correct, and we can't say because accident is not a living being and it cannot be told by somebody. The meaning of the verbs is different, because here tell is to order and here say is like to make a speech act. The next thing is that with the verbs discover, establish, explain, find, know, reveal, show, and understand, we can also use it plus passive verb plus WH clause to report information given or found out. It has now been revealed who was responsible for the accident. So we combined the sentence starting with it, the passive form, and we added WH clause, and as a result we got this kind of sentence which we can use to report information given. The decision to build the bridge was taken before it was established whether it was actually needed. Again, the same pattern, it plus passive verb plus WH clause. When that clause begins with that plus there, we can make a corresponding passive form there plus passive verb plus to be or to have been. Compare. It is thought that there are too many obstacles to peace, and there are thought to be too many obstacles to peace. So we can use this pattern, which begins with it, or we can use there are, and then passive verb plus to be or to have been. Another example is in 1981, it was believed that there were only 2 experts on the disease in the country, and in 1981, there were believed to be only 2 experts on the disease in the country. So both variants are possible. And now this is the first exercise for you. Which of the verbs can complete the sentence? Underline one or both. Please be very attentive, because sometimes both verbs are possible. The answers will be provided on the next slide. These are the answers. This is another exercise for you. If possible, rewrite these newspaper headlines as passive sentences with the pattern it plus passive verb plus that clause as in the example. If this is not possible, write cross after the headline. It's like, it has been agreed that the UN will send in troops. And here is the headline, agreement that UN will send in troops. Usually in newspaper headlines, there is a tendency to omit some necessary parts of the sentence. It's a characteristic feature of newspaper style. Why do they do that? Well, they do it because the place in a newspaper costs money, and the less the sentence is, the cheaper it costs. So that's why newspaper in English tend to omit some necessary parts of the sentence, and this is called ellipsis. So now your task is to change these sentences into the more grammatically correct variants. The answers will be provided on the next slide. As you can see, some of these sentences could not be transformed into correct variants. In the end of this lecture, I would like, just for your information, attach the table of all the passive forms in English. As you know, we have three aspects: indefinite, perfect, and continuous, and different tenses in these aspects. So here you have all of them and the examples, just for you to revise them. And this is the end of the lecture. Thank you for your attention. I was glad to deliver it to you. I hope you find it useful, or you find some kind of interesting material here. I wish you all the best. Stay calm, stay safe, stay cool, and see you next time. Bye bye.